Commander Krell Vox swiveled his sensor stalks in disbelief, triple-checking the readings from his bioscanner. His crystalline exoskeleton clinked softly as he shifted position, trying to process the impossible sight before him. There, suspended between two storage containers in the forward operating base on Nexus 7, was the newly arrived human contractor, James Jimmy Stone, fast asleep in what appeared to be a crude fabric sling. "By the sacred crystals, he can't be serious," Krell Vox muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. The scanner confirmed what his eyes refused to accept. The human's vital signs showed all indicators of deep, restful sleep. This despite the fact that their position was less than 2 kilometers from the front lines of the bloodiest conflict this sector had seen in 3 centuries. The rhythmic thunder of orbital defense batteries pounded through the air every few minutes, each concussion powerful enough to shatter the eardrums of lesser species. The acrid smell of chemical weapons lingered from this morning's Ravager assault, and the ground still trembled from subterranean boreworms trying to breach their perimeter. Yet there lay Jimmy Stone, snoring softly with a datapad resting on his chest. "Lieutenant Zaranix, come see this," Krell Vox called to his second-in-command, a Valaxian whose bioluminescent skin pulsed with nervous energy. Her tentacles coiled tightly as she approached, a natural reaction to the constant stress of their environment. "What troubles you, Commander? More breach attempts?" She froze mid-step when she spotted Jimmy. Is the human dead?" "No, Lieutenant, he's sleeping, peacefully." "That's not possible. The psychic stress alone in this sector would drive most species mad. We lost 3 Mindweavers to anxiety attacks just this morning." Krell Vox consulted his scanner again. His brainwave patterns indicate stage 4 sleep. Heart rate 62 beats per minute. Blood pressure optimal. He's not just sleeping, he's getting better rest than I've had in my hibernation pod. A particularly massive explosion lit up the sky, bathing the storage yard in crimson light. Both aliens instinctively dropped into defensive postures. Jimmy Stone shifted slightly in his hammock, mumbled something about 5 more minutes, and continued sleeping. "Incredible," Zara Nix whispered, her skin now glowing a fascinated blue. "I've heard stories about human resilience, but this... Commander, do you realize what this means? The legends about Deathworlders might be underestimating them." Krell Vox raised a manipulator to silence her as he noticed something even more astonishing on his scanner. "Lieutenant, his body is releasing chemicals associated with positive dreams. He's not just sleeping through a war zone, he's having pleasant dreams in one." Another explosion rocked the base. Through the smoke and chaos, Jimmy Stone's peaceful expression never changed. The human had found comfort in hell itself, and Krell Vox wasn't sure whether to be impressed or terrified by that fact. "Should we wake him, Commander? The safety briefing starts in 10 minutes. "No," Krell Vox decided, mandibles twitching in what passed for a smile among his species. "Let him rest. Something tells me we're going to need that uniquely human ability of his before this war is over." The story of how James Jimmy Stone ended up napping in an active war zone began 3 solar cycles ago, when the Ravager swarms first emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies. No one knew what they wanted, if they wanted anything at all beyond destruction. The multi-limbed horrors moved like living shadows, devouring everything in their path with mechanical precision and organic savagery. "The Ravagers are unlike anything we've encountered," Commander Krell Vox explained during yet another emergency briefing, while Jimmy Stone sat in the back of the room, casually sipping something he called coffee from a battered metal container. "They combine the worst aspects of biological and mechanical warfare. They adapt faster than we can develop countermeasures. Their toxins bypass our strongest shields." The assembled alien officers shuddered. The Valaxian skin flickered with patterns of distress. The gaseous Zephyrians condensed into tight, anxious clouds. Even the silicon-based Petrovasians, known for their unshakable calm, showed cracks in their crystalline forms. "Which is why," Krell Vox continued, gesturing towards Jimmy, who was now doodling on his notepad. "We've contracted help from the humans." The humans' arrival had caused quite a stir. Nexus 7 had been designated a Class 12 hazard zone, considered barely survivable even for the most hardened military species. When the Coalition discovered that humans rated it a mere Class 3, there had been widespread disbelief. When they learned that humans classified their home planet, Earth, as a Class 11, there had been outright panic. "The human says he's just a mechanical contractor," whispered Science Officer Pelnack, her feathered sensory crests quivering. "But look at him. He treats our deadliest weapons like children's toys. Yesterday I saw him patch a plasma leak with something he called duct tape while whistling." The Coalition's finest engineers had been breaking down under the constant strain. The Mindweavers, capable of processing 12-dimensional mathematics, had started experiencing collective nervous breakdowns. The quantum architects refused to leave their shielded bunkers, but Jimmy just showed up with his toolbox, his hammock, and an endless supply of bad jokes. "How did you even find this job?" Zara Nix had asked him once. "Oh, saw it on Craigslist," Jimmy had replied, chuckling at their confused expressions. "Just kidding. But seriously, the pay's good. And back home I worked oil rigs in Texas. This ain't so different, just with more tentacles and better dental." The base's medical officer, Dr. Ven Ra, had nearly suffered an episode of cellular division, her species' stress response, when monitoring Jimmy's first exposure to Ravager toxins. The human had accidentally inhaled a full dose while fixing a ventilation system. Instead of dissolving into a puddle of organic soup like any sensible being, he'd complained of something spicy in the air and asked if anyone had antacids. "His species evolved on a death world," Dr. Ven Ra explained to her colleagues, waving all four arms in agitation. "Their bodies are constantly at war with their environment. Their cells attack invisible enemies daily. They drink poison for pleasure and deliberately expose themselves to radiation for darker skin. How do you develop countermeasures against a species that treats mortal danger as an inconvenience?" The Ravagers seemed equally puzzled by humans. Their systematic attacks, perfectly calibrated to exploit the psychological weaknesses of most species, had zero effect on Jimmy. Sound frequencies designed to induce madness? He called it better than his white noise machine. "Psychic attacks? Like a massage for my brain," he'd said. "But doesn't any of this scare you?" asked a young Petrovasian engineer, after their third bombardment of the day. Jimmy had paused from his work on a quantum stabilizer, grease smudged across his face. "Kid, I worked retail during Black Friday sales. This is nothing." Commander Krell Vox had stopped trying to understand. The human's personnel file listed him as just a Class 2 mechanic. Yet here he was, sleeping through apocalyptic battles and fixing impossible problems with primitive tools and what he called good old human ingenuity. The war raged on, and the Coalition's finest continued to crack under the pressure. But Jimmy Stone, he just kept napping, fixing and laughing. A Deathworlder at peace in the midst of chaos, teaching the galaxy's most advanced species a lesson about resilience they never expected to learn. The day that truly cemented Jimmy Stone's legendary status among the Coalition forces started like any other on Nexus 7, with catastrophic devastation raining from the sky. "Incoming!" screamed the base's AI, its usually calm voice reaching panic frequencies that shattered 3 crystalline communication arrays. "Multiple orbital strikes detected. This is not a drill. Seek immediate shelter." The response was immediate and chaotic. The Zephyrians condensed into their panic state, becoming nearly liquid. The Valaxians' bioluminescence strobed so violently it triggered seizure warnings in the medical bay. Even the stoic Petrovasians fractured along their stress lines, spontaneously forming new geometric patterns in their terror. Meanwhile, in his now famous hammock, Jimmy Stone rolled over and pulled his cap lower over his eyes. "Someone wake him!" shouted Dr. Ven Ra, all 4 arms frantically working multiple scanners. "The bombardment will begin in—" "Too late." The first orbital strike hit with the force of a small nuclear device. The base's shields flared brilliant purple, struggling to deflect the energy. The ground buckled. Storage containers went flying. 3 different species went into various forms of protective hibernation. Jimmy's hammock swayed gently with the shockwave. He adjusted his position slightly and kept sleeping. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Van Ra declared, her cellular structure vibrating with scientific excitement. "Quick! Get me the neural scanners, the quantum resonance detectors, the psychic wavelength analyzers." A team of trembling scientists assembled around Jimmy's hammock, setting up increasingly complex equipment while trying to avoid being thrown around by the continuing bombardment. The readings they got back made even less sense than Jimmy's behavior. "These patterns. They're all wrong," muttered Chief Scientist Baltox, his crystalline appendages tinkling nervously. "According to these readings, he's not just sleeping. He's in the deepest, most restful sleep cycle possible for his species. He's actually dreaming about something called a beach vacation." Another explosion rocked the base. A piece of shrapnel embedded itself in the wall 6 inches from Jimmy's head. He scratched his nose and mumbled something about needing more sunscreen. "But it gets worse," Dr. Van Ra continued, recording frantically. "He's producing none of the stress hormones we'd expect. No cortisol spike, no adrenaline surge. His brain is releasing chemicals associated with contentment." The orbital bombardment lasted 17 minutes. In that time, the base's defensive systems registered 147 major impacts, the shields dropped to 12% power, and the assembled alien scientists recorded enough data about human sleep patterns to fill a quantum database. They thought that would be the peak of their observations. They were wrong. The ground assault began exactly 3 minutes after the bombardment ended. Ravager swarms burst from their underground tunnels, their biomechanical bodies gleaming with malevolent purpose. The base's perimeter defenses engaged automatically, filling the air with plasma fire and ionic bursts. "Biosignatures approaching from Vector 7, Lieutenant Zara Nix called out, her tentacles coiling in complex patterns of distress. "They're using their new sonic weapons." The Ravager's sonic attack hit like a physical wall. 3 Mindweavers collapsed instantly, their sensitive neural structures overloaded. The Petrovasians began to resonate dangerously, threatening to shatter. Even Commander Krell-Vox's crystalline exoskeleton developed hairline cracks. Jimmy Stone turned over in his hammock and started snoring louder to drown out the noise. "This defies all known laws of xenobiology," Dr. Van Ra exclaimed, frantically trying to keep her cellular structure from dividing under stress while still recording data. "The sonic frequencies should be liquefying his brain. Instead, they seem to be helping him sleep better." The Ravagers, perhaps sensing something was wrong with their attack, switched tactics. A pod of their bioweapons burst near the base, releasing a cocktail of their most effective toxins. Chemicals specifically designed to target every known weakness of Coalition species. The effect on the defenders was instantaneous and horrifying. The Zephyrians began precipitating out of their gaseous state. The Valaxian skin went completely dark, a sign of severe systemic shock. The Petrovasians started transmuting into simpler mineral forms. Jimmy Stone's only reaction was to pull his old Earth jacket closer around his shoulders like someone adjusting a blanket. His blood chemistry, it's actually neutralizing the toxins. Dr. Van Ra's voice had risen to nearly ultrasonic frequencies. No, more than that. His liver is processing them like they're some kind of recreational substance. His body thinks it's at something called a happy hour. The battle raged for hours. The Ravagers threw everything they had at the base. Plasma storms, quantum disruption fields, psychic lashes, reality distortion waves. Species that had evolved on the most peaceful worlds in the galaxy found themselves pushed to their absolute limits. Through it all, Jimmy Stone slept. The scientists recorded everything. His brain produced regular sleep spindles during artillery barrages. He entered REM sleep during close-quarters combat. He showed signs of having pleasant dreams while reality itself was being warped around him. "Look at these readings," Baltox exclaimed, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. "According to our instruments, he's currently dreaming about something called a barbecue in the middle of a Class 12 combat zone." "Impossible," declared a Zephyrian researcher, partially condensed from stress. "The human brain should be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of threat responses required to process this environment." "That's just it," Dr. Venra said, reviewing the data with all four arms moving at once. "His brain isn't processing them as threats at all. The human's baseline threat assessment parameters are so high that nothing here is registering as dangerous enough to disturb his sleep. It's as if—" She paused, all three of her heart skipping a beat as the realization hit her. "It's as if everything we consider lethal combat conditions barely registers as background noise to his species." The assembled scientists fell into stunned silence, broken only by the continuing sounds of battle and Jimmy's peaceful snoring. "Should we include this in our report to Coalition High Command?" asked Baltox nervously. Dr. Venra looked at her data, then at the sleeping human who had single-handedly rewritten their understanding of xenobiology, and made a decision. "Yes," she said firmly, "but mark it as extremely classified. The last thing we need is for the Ravagers to discover that all their deadliest weapons are essentially human lullabies." Another explosion lit up the sky. Jimmy Stone smiled in his sleep and muttered something about roasting marshmallows. Command Center Alpha erupted into chaos as the proximity alarms screamed to life. The massive screen at the front of the room displayed what looked like a solid wave of Ravager biosignatures, stretching from horizon to horizon. "Mother of crystals," Commander Krell-Vox whispered, his exoskeleton paling to a sickly translucent shade. "They're launching everything they have at us." "Total force estimate?" Lieutenant Zara Nix asked, her tentacles practically tied in knots from stress. "Unknown. The sensors stopped counting at 10 million units." The news spread through the base like a quantum cascade failure. The Mindweavers broke down completely, their higher brain functions shutting off in self-defense. The Petrovasians began spontaneously reverting to their base mineral state. Even the hardened veteran Zephyrians started dissipating into their component gases. "Evacuation protocols initiated," announced the base AI, its voice cracking with static. "All non-essential personnel proceed to emergency quantum tunnels. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not." The AI's voice cut off as the first wave of Ravager cyber attacks hit their systems. Base defenses started failing one by one. Shield generators overloaded, weapon systems crashed, the quantum tunnels flickered uncertainly. And through it all, Jimmy Stone continued his peaceful nap, a slight smile on his face as his hammock swayed between the storage containers. "Someone grab the human!" Dr. Venra shouted, her cellular structure practically vibrating apart. "He'll never survive!" Her voice trailed off as she looked at her scanner. According to the readings, Jimmy's vital signs were still showing perfect rest patterns. If anything, they'd improved since the crisis began. The first wave of Ravagers hit the outer perimeter like a tsunami of biomechanical horror. Their new weapons fired simultaneously: sonic disruptors, neural scramblers, quantum destabilizers, and something that seemed to bend the laws of physics themselves. The combined effect should have turned any living thing's brain to soup. Instead, Jimmy shifted slightly and mumbled, "Thanks for the white noise, guys." That's when Dr. Venra noticed something extraordinary on her instruments. "Commander, the Ravager weapons! They're having an unexpected effect on the human's brainwaves." The weapons designed to destroy minds were somehow synchronizing with Jimmy's sleep cycles, creating a bizarre feedback loop. His peaceful dream state was being amplified and broadcast back through the Ravager's own neural network. The human's delta waves are being picked up by their hive mind. Dr. Venra's cellular structure pulsed with excitement. "They're receiving pure, concentrated peace." The effect on the Ravager swarm was immediate and devastating. The biomechanical horrors, creatures engineered for constant aggression and violence, suddenly found themselves experiencing something entirely alien to them: tranquility. The first rank of Ravagers stumbled, their movements becoming uncoordinated. The second rank crashed into them, their own neural networks becoming infected with Jimmy's peaceful brain patterns. The third rank began showing signs of drowsiness. They're falling asleep!" Lieutenant Zara Nix exclaimed, her bioluminescence flickering in disbelief. Like a stone thrown into a pond, the effect rippled outward through the entire Ravager army. Their weapons dropped from suddenly slack appendages. Their specialized combat organs began powering down. One by one, then in hundreds, then thousands, the dreaded Ravagers simply lay down where they stood. The sight was unprecedented. An army of nightmare creatures, curled up like children, some of them actually beginning to snore through organs that were never designed for such a peaceful purpose. "The humans doing it," Commander Krelvox said in awe. "He's defeating them with a nap." The base's surviving scientists worked frantically to record everything. The Ravager's highly networked neural structure, designed to share combat information and coordinate attacks, was now broadcasting Jimmy's peaceful sleep patterns to their entire species. Reports started coming in from other sectors. Ravager forces everywhere were simply stopping, lying down and drifting off to sleep. And at the center of it all, completely unaware that he'd just turned the tide of an interstellar war, Jimmy Stone dreamed about fishing on a quiet lake back on Earth. "Should we wake him?" Lieutenant Zara Nix asked cautiously. "Don't you dare," Commander Krelvox replied, watching as more Ravager units succumbed to the peaceful contagion. Right now, that human's sleep patterns are accomplishing what all our advanced weapons couldn't. He's teaching an entire species how to rest. Dr. Ven Ra checked her instruments one final time. According to these readings, he's currently dreaming about something called Sunday afternoon football. Whatever that is, it seems to be particularly effective at pacifying Ravager neural structures. The crisis that had threatened to overwhelm their strongest defenses had been averted, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through one human's ability to find peace in chaos. The most feared army in the galaxy lay sleeping under the stars, their weapons forgotten, their aggression dissolved in the face of something they had never encountered before, the simple tranquility of a good nap. And Jimmy Stone? He just kept on sleeping, unaware that he'd just become the first being in history to defeat the Ravagers by doing absolutely nothing at all. 2 weeks after the unprecedented sleeping victory, as it came to be known, Jimmy Stone finally attended the official debriefing, fashionably late and carrying his ever-present cup of coffee. The room was packed with the Coalition's highest-ranking scientists and military leaders. The Petravasians had sent their Grand Crystal Archon. The Zephyrian High Consciousness floated near the ceiling. Even the reclusive Mindweaver Collective had emerged from their isolation chambers for this historic occasion. "Mr. Stone," Commander Krelvox began formally, "you have single-handedly revolutionized our understanding of warfare, psychology, and xenobiology. Your unprecedented ability to maintain deep sleep during combat conditions has led to the development of new peace-inducing technologies. The Ravager forces remain in a state of dormancy. We have so many questions." "Sure thing," Jimmy interrupted, taking a loud slurp of coffee. "But first, anyone know if the breakroom replicator is working? I'm starving." Dr. Ven Ra's cellular structure rippled with barely contained excitement as she projected her findings. "Mr. Stone, we've analyzed your brainwave patterns from that day. The level of peace you maintained while sleeping through a Class 12 combat scenario suggests some form of advanced evolutionary defense mechanism. Perhaps a specialized neural structure or—" "Nah," Jimmy shrugged, propping his boots up on the conference table. "I just worked third shift at a 24-hour diner all through college. Once you've dealt with hungry customers at 3 a.m. during finals week, not much bothers you anymore." The assembled aliens stared in stunned silence. The high consciousness almost precipitated from shock. But the toxins!" Dr. Venra protested. Your body processed Ravager bioweapons like they were nutrients. Oh, that, Jimmy chuckled. Probably built up a tolerance from my mother-in-law's cooking. Her meatloaf could strip paint. The Grand Crystal Archon chimed in confusion. Several Mindweavers clutched their sensory organs. The Coalition has already begun implementing changes based on your example, Commander Krelvox continued. We're revising our entire approach to combat stress. The Mindweavers are studying human relaxation techniques. The Petravasians are attempting to incorporate napping into their crystalline structure. Cool, Jimmy nodded, checking something on his datapad. Hey, speaking of naps, anyone mind if I crash here for a bit? The quantum physics lecture you guys are giving is better than my white noise machine. Mr. Stone, a Zephyrian scientist, wafted forward urgently. We've dedicated our most advanced research facilities to understanding your abilities. Our preliminary findings suggest that humans have some form of natural immunity to psychological warfare. Perhaps a defense mechanism developed on your Deathworld? Jimmy considered this while fishing a candy bar from his pocket. Nah, that's just life, you know. Back home we've got Monday morning traffic, tax season and reality TV. This war zone stuff is pretty chill in comparison. The room erupted in a cacophony of scientific protests and bewildered questions. 3 Petravasians cracked from pure confusion. The high consciousness had to excuse itself to recondense. Commander Krelvox raised his manipulators for silence. Mr. Stone, thanks to you, we're rewriting our entire understanding of combat psychology. Your casual resilience has inspired a new doctrine of warfare. One based not on escalating terror, but on maintaining calm in the face of chaos. That's nice, Jimmy yawned, already settling into one of the conference chairs. Wake me up when you need something fixed. Okay. As the human drifted off to sleep right there in the briefing room, Dr. Venra made her final notes. Conclusion. Human capability for peace in chaos remains unexplained. Subject maintains it's nothing special, which is perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. Recommendation. Classify humans as Class 15 psychological anomalies. Additional note. Subject has requested we install something called a cappuccino machine in the maintenance bay. The assembled aliens watched in continued amazement as Jimmy Stone, saviour of the base and baffler of scientists, began to snore softly during the most important military briefing in Coalition history. In the end, it seemed, the greatest weapon against chaos wasn't superior firepower or advanced technology. It was simply the human ability to shrug, smile, and take a nap. And somewhere in the distance, a vast army of Ravagers continued to sleep peacefully, their dreams filled with strange visions of Sunday afternoon football and beach vacations.